These, as you can see, are the tawsiyat lil khutaba'i wal muballighin, the recommendations and the advice for the speakers who sit on the mimbar, and also everyone else who is associated with the commemoration of Imam Husayn alayhi salam from Sayyid Ali Sistani. You see Sayyid Sistani issuing a statement highlighting this issue. In this statement, he's saying the muballighin, the people who sit on the mimbar, washu'ara, and the poets, they should beware and they should ashadd al-hadar, they should take the utmost caution of stating anything in such a way that strengthens or indicates exaggeration in as far as the Prophet and his progeny is concerned. And he says ghulu is of two types. Isbaghu sifat al-uluhiyyati ala ghayri Allah subhanahu, painting entities other than Allah with the colors of divinity, or bestowing divine attributes to any of the creations of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has certain sifat, he has certain attributes and qualities which are unique to him. If these are shared and bestowed upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family, then this is ghulu. Wa ithbat umur wa ma'anin lam taqum hujjatun mawthuqatun alayha, and also affirming matters or meanings for which no valid hujjah is standing. Yani they are not established, they're not proven. There are certain claims about the Imams or about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that are not proven by any evidence in the sources. So these also should not be attributed to the Imams, because otherwise it is ghulu. And he says وَمَذْهَبُ أَهْلِ الْبَيْتِ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّلَامُ خَالٍ عَنِ الْغُلُوِّ بِنَوْعَيْهِ. He says as far as the school of the Ahlul Bayt is concerned, it is empty, it is supposed to be devoid of all forms and both forms of exaggeration. Rather, the way of the Ahlul Bayt is to submit to the Prophet and his progeny and to affirm for them the stations and the positions on which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed them, without any addition and without any exaggeration, but rather with exercise of extreme caution in areas where things are doubtful. So he's advising that we should err on the side of caution. If we are not perfectly sure about something, we should not attribute it to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And we should also exercise piety and fear of God, which should restrain us from attributing or establishing or affirming for them that which there is no reliable, credible hujjah and evidence for. He says the muttaqi, the God-conscious, pious person, is the one who does not cross the limits, who does not exaggerate in as far as those whom he loves are concerned. Yani if we love the Ahlul Bayt, should not exaggerate. كَمَا لَا يَحِيفُ عَلَى مَنْ يُبْغِضُ. In the same manner as a muttaqi does not exaggerate when it comes to those whom he loves, he also does not go beyond the limits in oppressing and being unfair to the person whom he hates. Rather, he's a balanced and moderate person who does justice to everyone. وَلَا يَصِحُ بِنَاءُ هَذِهِ الْمَعَانِي عَلَى مُجَرَّدِ الْمَحَبَّةِ. He says it is not correct that we establish and we start creating ideologies whereby we exaggerate the status of the Ahlul Bayt, and then we justify the creation of these kinds of ideologies by pleading the love card. By playing the love card, that no, because we love the Ahlul Bayt, this is all okay. Because often you will see the love of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam is a card that is used to justify all sorts of un-Islamic and counterproductive practices. Sayyid Sistani is warning against that. Then he says, وَتَصْدِيقْ مَنْ زَادَ شَيْئًا. And we should not be quick in believing in everyone who adds to their station with anything. وَالْإِذْعَانْ لَهُ بِمَزِيدِ الْإِيمَانِ. We should not submit to any random claims that are made about the Ahlul Bayt as if they are gospel truth, because that is going to lead إِلَى الْمُزَايَدَةِ فِي أَمْرِ الدِّينِ. That is going to lead to things getting added to the deen. بِغَيْرِ حُجَّةٍ. Without evidence. We want an evidence-based religion and deen. We don't want a religion where everyone is free to add whatever they like to the deen. And aslan, if you go to see Imam Husayn alayhi salam, he set out on his mission out of a desire to protect the deen and to destroy the innovations and to uphold the sunan. So he says if we are not careful, if we just listen to everyone who presents claims about the Ahlul Bayt, regardless of whether they're exaggerated or not, and we just do tasdeeq, whatever is presented, we just do tasdeeq of it, and we allow people to add whatever they want into the religion, then that is going to lead to huduth al-bid'ah, to the emergence of innovations, un-Islamic, anti-Islamic innovations, wa tam' al-jahilin. It's going to make the ignorant people more confident to add more stuff and more problematic and unhealthy practices. وَتَرَأُّسْ أَهْلِ الضَّلَالَةِ. It will lead to people of misguidance becoming and occupying positions of leadership. Because once you have no proper standards in place to verify information, then everyone is free to say whatever they want to say. وَذَلِكَ يَمْحَقُ الدِّينَ. That's going to result in the destruction of religion. فَلُزُومُ الْحُجَّةِ وَالْمِيزَانِ أَحْمَدُ وَأَسْلَمُ. So he says that's why the best solution is stick to the hujjah, stick to the evidence and to the mizan. And that is the more praiseworthy and the safer path. This is something that even the highest level marji'iyya is concerned about. And that's why you can see every year almost in the last decade or so, these kinds of pronouncements, these kinds of statements have been issued by Sistani. He has tried to remind people that they should be careful about claims that they make from the mimbar, about what they say about the Ahlul Bayt, about what they attribute to the Ahlul Bayt. And he has particularly focused on this idea that under no circumstance should we promote anything that gives the impression of ghulu and exaggeration when it comes to the Prophet and his noble progeny. And he has especially highlighted these two aspects. Ghulu, whereby you give the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sifat of divinity on entities other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's number one. And number two, where you claim things about them for which there is no reliable evidence. Now you just do the math. You can look at the majalis and you can measure them against this criteria. The content that is being presented in the majalis, are the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being shared with the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam without valid evidence? This is one point. The other important point, so you can see in his advisories, he says that those people who sit on the mimbar, one of the things that they should focus on is al-ihtimam bi wasaya al-aimma alayhimus salam. They should keep in mind the advisories of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. What advisories? Sayyid Sistani proceeds to quote some of the narrations which he authenticates concerning advisories of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, which give us a sense of what kind of vision they had for their Shia. So he starts with the wasiyah of Imam Abu Abdullah as-Sadiq alayhi salam, where Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam says, alayka bi taqwa. He says, I enjoin you with taqwa of Allah, with fear of Allah, consciousness of Allah, mindfulness of Allah, wal wara'. Restrain yourself from evil. Wal ijtihad. He says, I want to see you working hard in the matter of your deen. Wa sidq al hadith. You should be known for truthfulness. Wa ada' al amana. You should be known for trustworthiness when it comes to returning deposits. Wa husn al khuluq. You should be known for your best akhlaq. وَحُسْنِ الْجِوَارِ. You should be known as a good neighbor. وَكُونُوا دُعَاةً إِلَى الْخَيْرِ بِغَيْرِ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ. And you should be callers towards goodness without using your tongues. Meaning with your action. Sometimes the greatest tabligh and the greatest calling towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and towards the deen can be done simply by being a good human being, by exhibiting the best possible akhlaq, the best possible manners. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam lay a huge amount of focus on this. So as Azadars of Imam Husayn alayhi salam, this is a huge responsibility. Your actions will speak louder than your words. So again, every single ritual and action that you perform should be reassessed and re-evaluated in light of this question that if I'm going to do this ritual of Azadari, is this actually going to draw people's hearts towards the deen, towards the Quran, towards the Sunnah, towards the objective of Imam Husayn, or is it going to turn people away? And then the Imam appeals to the people. He says, وَكُونُوا زَيْنًا وَلَا تَكُونُوا شَيْنًا. Be a source of beauty, be a source of adornment for us. وَلَا تَكُونُوا شَيْنًا. Don't be a source of disgrace. Don't be a source of humiliation for us. So again, if we keep this in mind, everything that you do as part of Azadari, ask yourself the question, is this beautifying the message of Imam Husayn alayhi salam? Is it drawing people's hearts towards Abu Abdullah al-Husayn and what he wanted to achieve in this ummah, which is to establish the supremacy of the Quran and the Sunnah? Or is this counterproductive? Is this taking people's minds away? Or even if it's not taking people's minds away, it's not adding any value to the objective of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. Then Syed Sistani continues and quotes that other hadith from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam said to him, Ya Jabir, ayaktafi man yantahilu at-tashayyu'a an yaqula bihubbina ahl al-bayt. O Jabir, is it sufficient for the one who claims to be a Shia and lover of the Ahlul Bayt to verbally make the claim that I love the Ahlul Bayt and that is sufficient? He says absolutely not. فَوَاللَّهِ مَا شِيعَتُنَا إِلَّا مَنِ اتَّقَى اللَّهَ وَأَطَاعَهُ. He says, look, our political supporters and our followers are none except those who fear Allah and obey Him. وَمَا كَانُوا يُعْرَفُونَ يَا جَابِرْ إِلَّا بِالتَّوَاضُعِ وَالتَّخَشُّعِ وَالْأَمَانَةِ. O Jabir, our Shia would not be recognized among the people except with these qualities. They would be known for their their humility and their humbleness, for their khushu', for their amana, their trustworthiness, وَكَثْرَةِ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ, for their excessive remembrance of Allah and focus on Him and devotion to Him. وَالصَّوْمِ وَالصَّلَاةِ, they used to be known for their fast and their salah. So remember, Syed Sistani, including these ahadith in his advisories, what's the message he's trying to give? Is that, look, your azaa should also have these qualities. Your Muharram commemorations and your remembrance of Imam Husayn, is it centering around all these things? Around humility and khushu'? Are you promoting trustworthiness and honesty? Are you promoting the dhikr of Allah? Unfortunately, sometimes you find that the mimbar is a place where not enough zikr of Allah is being done. A person who went to a grand marji' and he said, Sayyidina, I have to recite majalis. Can you suggest to me a topic? And that marji' very sadly said to him, whatever you do, please speak about Allah, because Allah is madloom, He is oppressed on our mimbar. Meaning to say that He's not given the mention and the focus and the attention that He deserves. Why? Because we are too busy promoting sectarian concepts for which Allah revealed no sultan, at the expense of the actual teachings of the Quran and the actual teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimussalam, which have things like emphasis on excessive kathrat dhikrillah, excessive remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as far as our majalis are concerned, do we have that level of abundant dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? In our poetry, for example, which we recite to commemorate Aba Abdullah, are we giving the dhikr of Allah and the devotion of Imam Husayn alayhi salam to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are we focusing that? Are we showcasing that? Because sometimes our poetry, instead of presenting Imam Husayn alayhi salam as a humble, pious, God-fearing slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who was ever conscious and ever mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sometimes the poetry tries to present him as a superhuman who has all sorts of divine and supernatural powers. Again, we need to remember that this runs contrary to the vision of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimussalam. So in any case, the Shia were known for their excessive remembrance of Allah, for their fasting and prayer, kindness to their parents, care for their neighbors. They were known for their truthfulness, honesty, known for their recitation of the Quran. Another thing they were known for is restraining their tongues from backbiting or bad-mouthing people, except with khair. And then he said, Ya Jabir, la tadhhabanna bika al-madahib. He said, oh Jabir, don't get swayed by sects. حسب الرجل أن يقول حب عليا وأتولاه ثم لا يكون مع ذلك فعالا. Says, you think it is sufficient for a person to say that I love Ali alayhi salam and I am his wali, ثم لا يكون مع ذلك فعالا, and then he doesn't need to do any actions to prove this claim? He says, even if a person were to say that I love Rasulullah and then he were not to follow his seerah, ثم لا يتبع سيرته ولا يعمل بسنته, and then he does not act on the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ما نفعه حب shay'a. He says such a person's love for Rasulullah would not help him, would not benefit him in the least. This is the case with Rasulullah. Then what about those lesser than Rasulullah? He says, oh Jabir, I swear by Allah, nearness to Allah cannot be achieved except with ta'ah, except with obedience. Always remember this principle, especially when they talk to you about wasila and tell you this is wasila and that is wasila. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt, they swear by Allah, nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be achieved except through obedience. So if you want to take something as wasila to Allah, it must be in compliance with His command. So this is another principle in light of which the entire commemoration of Imam Husayn should be re-evaluated. How much of what we are doing in these commemorations is actually approved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the messengers and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt? How much of it is our own innovation? If it is our own innovation, then expect no thawab, because everything that's man-made will only serve to take you away and distance you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Man kana lillahi muti'an fahuwa lana wali. Remember, they talk a lot about wilaya. Well, here is the correct concept of wilaya that the Imams of Ahlul Bayt promote, which is man kana lillahi muti'an فَهُوَ لَنَا وَلِيٌّ. Whosoever is obedient to Allah, such a person is our ally, someone we associate ourselves with. وَمَا تُنَالُ وِلَايَتُنَا إِلَّا بِالْعَمَلِ وَالْوَرَعِ. And our wilaya and association cannot be obtained except through amal, through hard work, and through restraining oneself from evil. And then Syed Sistani presents this narration from Muawiyah ibn Wahab, from the Imam alayhi salam, when he asked him, how are we supposed to behave with the rest of the people, especially those who are not part of the same party as us? Imam says, why don't you look at your own Imams? How do they behave? فَتَصْنَعُونَ مَا يَصْنَعُونَ. So you behave as they behave. فَوَاللَّهِ إِنَّهُمْ لَيَعُودُونَ مَرْضَاهُ. Because he says, I swear by Allah, as they visit the sick, Muslims. وَيَشْهَدُونَ جَنَائِزَهُمْ. They attend the funeral of their fellow Muslims. So this is another question we need to ask ourselves. وَيَشْهَدُونَ جَنَائِزَهُمْ, for example, or يَعُودُونَ مَرْضَاهُمْ. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam is saying that the way of the Ahlul Bayt is that we do this with everyone in the Ummah. Even a person who does not share our political views, we are supposed to visit them when they're sick and to check on them. We are supposed to attend their funeral. Basically, we're supposed to maintain full brotherhood with everyone in the Muslim Ummah.